Hello, I'm Noel. This is Antonia from Boxtail Soup Theatre Company. This is, of course, a Boxtail Scoop. And we've been very busy, as usual, this week, working on stuff for Hansel and Gretel. So we're just very quickly going to show you what we've been up to.
We started off the week by what happens actually when we finish a job, as in finished all the papier-mâché last week of the main pieces of set. What happens when we finish one job is we have to then kind of have a day of figuring things out before we move on to the next jobs. So for the beginning part of the week, we were going through all the sort of little problems that we were yet to solve or the decisions we were yet to make, and making sure that we'd solve them. One being how to attach the big trees to the door frame for A Christmas Carol, which actually we ended up with. This usually simple is best, isn't it? And we use these Velcro straps, the kind of things that you might use to wrap a cable together, and those sort of double-sided Velcro, and then that's what we've gone with, isn't it, in the end for those?
Yes, and luckily the shape of the door itself helped, because it means that because it's not straight up and down, it means the straps don't slide down so easily.
And it's got a brace on the corners at the top, hasn't it, which meant that it could kind of hook round that.
Yeah, so that was good because that was a quick solution
Relatively
to what could have been
simple,
a difficult problem.
And then we had to figure out roughly how we want to, sort of the puppet delivery system, as we call it. And we decided that because we have stands ready and available for the Christmas Carol puppets, ideally it would be best if we could use those stands for the puppets in this show. So for the two human puppets, the Witch and Ma, obviously that's perfect. But we needed to check whether that would work for the animals because they're a lot smaller. But actually it seems like that might work. So we've got another alternative if it doesn't, but we're going to use those in rehearsals and see whether we're happy with that, rather than try and make something else, which potentially is unnecessary.
Yep.
So a couple of things like that we needed to sort. And then I went off to the fabric shop, my favourite fabric shop, and bought the fabric for the costumes. And Noel got on with some other prop making duties. So I'll show you the costumes quickly. These are two sort of little waistcoaty jacket things for Hansel and Gretel. This is Gretel's one, this is the one that I'm going to be wearing. And you can see the print of the fabric is similar. It's a batik style of dyeing, again in the same way as the animals are. This is actually slightly more like tie-dye, this particular one, but it is still a batik. And I've got it trimmed with this little gingham binding and around the edges of the pockets just to give it a little bit of detail. And when they're on, they sit they sit open, because I wanted them to look a little bit more like a jacket than a waistcoat. I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks
sweet. Absolutely beautiful. And, you know, the fact these are made completely from scratch. So it's not like you're building on top of anything. The whole thing is done from the raw fabric.
I think I've said before that I'm a bit of a maverick sewer. I think if I couldn't ever go on the sewing bee, I think they'd throw me out, because I don't use patterns. I draft my own patterns. But I don't even really do that properly. I tend to do that out of bits of fabric. I measure them off the two of us. I don't have a dressmaker's dummy. If anybody's got a spare one that they don't use anymore, I want it. So please hit me up with that. It would be so much easier. But yeah, so they're drafted from my own patterns. Then this one is I haven't quite finished this one. This is Noel's one. This is for Hansel. So in this lovely blue with the same gingham binding. This will tie in with Ma, their mother, costume. She's going to have a kind of gingham little headband and belt. I wanted them to look like they're from the same family. And then I've got his pockets just here ready to stitch on. I've pinned the binding on. I've just got to stitch that and then stitch the pockets to the waistcoat. So they're coming along nicely.
I think they look absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
And then obviously, as we said before, we were doing a lot of papier-mâché of the big set last week. You can see a lot of that stuff behind us. Believe me, this doesn't even account for half of the papier-mâché that we did. So we got all that covered, and that is all made of various kinds of foam board. I then went on to make the smaller props and things, as Antonia was saying. And I mean, it's a funny job really, because there's a lot of little bits to make. Most of them are very, very simple, but nevertheless, it's time consuming just to draw them out, measure them out, make sure they're the right size for whatever they've got to do, then cut them out and cover them. So just to give you a few examples of, a few different bits and pieces here, all sorts of little things. We're making Christmas ornaments for the tree at the end, so I've made multiple versions of those. These are just out of 5mm foam board, so you can see what it's like before it gets covered. I've got a big gingerbread man here. This is 10mm foam board, so it's a little bit thicker. And then that gets covered with papier-mâché. This is the witch's
wooden spoon magic wand.
Spoon. So that gets covered with papier-mâché just to toughen it up and give it a surface on which we can then paint or add the paper that will actually give it its cover and its final appearance. There are a few other more complicated little bits that I've been sorting out as well. You'll remember we've got these tree stump stools that are used in the show, and they have removable lids. And inside the lid, we've got a little ridge because the inside of the stool is braced, so that even though they're only made of foam board and papier-mâché, we can still stand on them or sit on them. They take our full weight. What we wanted to be able to do though was lift those lids off and have things appear inside them. So in one of them, we've got a fire, for example. In another one, we've got a little stack of pancakes. What I had to do was make sure that we could fit our little stack of pancakes in there, but not get in the way of the brace that's in the middle. So there'll be a trick to decorating that makes it look like they're a little stack of pancakes all together. And then finally, you should be able to see on the tree behind me here, there is a little window. So in the forest that Hansel and Gretel venture into, we didn't want it to just be a bunch of trees. We also wanted to give it that magical fairy tale feel. So in your original design, there are little doors and little windows dotted around the trees. So we were trying to think of a way to do that we that would be easy to apply, but also would allow us to pop a little light in there and have that come on at certain points in the show. So we could create that kind of magical effect of all the little windows in the trees, all the little woodland animals lighting up.
There's a scene later on in the show when they get left in the woods in the dark, isn't there, where Hansel gets scared of the dark, and we have a song about why you don't need to be scared of the dark, because actually there's lots of beautiful, lovely, magical creatures that are living in the wood, and it's their time that if they're nocturnal, that's when they would come out. So the idea being at that point that the lights would come on in the houses, and suddenly it would be this twinkly, magical glow, and not frightening at all, but actually magical.
Yeah, so I'm pleased with that. Those will stick onto the front of the trees. They'll be easily, quickly removable using magnets, and they'll be sort of dotted around the various trees that we have around the magical forest.
And Noel wants them to do disco lighting at some point.
Just for the end of the show.
End, which,
when they have the Christmas party at the end. I think that'd be nice.
All the animals having a disco.
Absolutely.
It's nice, I like it.
So this stuff, I mean, it's all very simple on the surface of it, but it's quite time consuming to draw all the various bits and pieces out. And there's a whole load of it, in fact, elsewhere that's already in process of being covered.
So that's where we're at, really. I'm thrilled with this, by the way. I think it's beautiful. It was Noel's idea to kind of have them stuck on the front, and I think it's just really nice because it gives them that little bit more three dimension. It gives a bit more depth. Yeah,
it creates a bit of relief, like a little shadow, and yeah, I think it looks nice.
Yeah, so pleased with that. Pleased with how it's all going, and we just need to crack on now, really. So we will have probably, I would think, more to show you. I'd hope so, anyway, next week. In the meantime, if you are enjoying the vlogs, please do like, subscribe, leave us a comment, ask any questions you would like. Apologies, there's no puppets in this week's vlog, but hopefully we will have the bodies of Mara and the Witch nearly done by next week, and we'll be able to show you what they look like.
Yeah. And if you're anywhere near Cheltenham when we're doing these shows, we're there from, what's the date? It's, towards the end of November, we're there right up until the end of December doing Hansel and Gretel and Christmas Carol. I mention it because some shows are already sold out. So if you happen to be anywhere nearby, if you're in the UK and you fancy coming along, then do book now. I'll put a link in the description. Thanks.